Hey, greetings everyone. Glenn Kellaway from the basement. Start of another week. This morning I wanted to address the topic of underrated albums. These albums that I'm going to rank in this video, I consider some of the most underrated albums of all time. They're the ones in my collection that would make up my list of the 10 most underrated albums. So I may even have 12. Let's get started. First, number 12, I think, on my list, or 13. We'll see how that works out. The Clash, Sandinista. 2-disc set or triple album set. This album is a mess, but I say that with the highest regard for the word mess. I think it's a great album. I like how eclectic it is. I like how messy it is. It reminds me of the Beatles' White Album in terms of it's just a pile of stuff that seems to not make any cohesive sense at all, but it all works. And I think this album deserves more love from, I'm sure the real dedicated Clash fans like it, but I think if you're picking a list of Clash albums in most lists, this probably comes in near the bottom, but one of my favorite Clash albums, Sandinista. Next, The Doors. The Doors came out with an incredible debut album, arguably would be on the list of greatest debut albums ever. You know, they were different. The haunting kind of keyboardy sound and everything. At the time, it was a little different, and the song "The End" was great. Like My Fire, the long version, and yeah, that was just a great debut album. Then they followed up with Strange Days. Now, I think people think Strange Days is a much weaker album, and I would argue it's a better album than the first one. When the Music's Over is just a killer track, and the song Strange Days, the title song, I'm a big fan of this album. And Love Me Two Times is on here. Moonlight Drive, People Are Strange. I think this album deserves much more credit than it gets. The Doors, Strange Days. Next, what do I got here? I got a bunch of vinyl too, but for some reason I'm starting with these CDs. The greatest artist of all time, in my opinion, the guy sitting behind me here, Mr. Bob Dylan. Self-Portrait. Boy, when this album came out, people didn't like it. I didn't like it. And I think the years have proven us all wrong. It's a pretty good album. There's, of course, some songs on here that I don't care about, but overall, this is a pretty good album. I like all the Tired Horses, and I even like Wigwam, yes. But this album, especially maybe as a result of the bootleg series and another Self-Portrait deluxe set that came out with all the great tracks and stuff of that time, maybe that helped boost this up a little bit. But I think it's a fine album now, and like I said, it's an underrated album in Dylan's canon of albums. Next, Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney has a lot of albums you would either say suck or are underrated. I think the first underrated album in Paul's catalog would be this one, Wildlife. It followed Ram. So we had the McCartney album, which at the time people thought was disappointing because it was, still the Beatles were still in everybody's mind in 1970 when that came out. But that's an awesome album, actually. Ram, which I think a lot of people consider Paul's best album. Then he comes out with this, and it's just a bit different. And I don't know. I didn't like it when it came out, and I don't think it makes many best ofs. But I'd say a couple of years ago, Norman Maslov did a video kind of revisiting this album and saying, hey, this is a pretty good record. Give it another chance. And it motivated me to give it a listen. So thanks, Mazzy. And I agreed. I went back to it and went, I didn't give this much of a consideration as I should have. And I will take Wings Wildlife as an album that I can pick out when I'm listening to Paul McCartney and have no problem playing. Underrated album. Next on the list, let's go with Van Morrison. Van Morrison was so prolific from 69 to 1980 probably. I mean, you're looking at Astro Weeks and Moon Dance and St. Dominic's Preview and Tupelo Honey. Those albums are all just packed full of genius, man. Just so good. I mean, that's his period. Then he started coming out with albums like Hard Knows the Highway and A Period of Transition. Now, I never hear people talk about these albums. They're really good too. I mean, I think especially Hard Knows the Highway, it's not a step down from those other albums. It's great. I mean, Snow and San Anselmo, fantastic song. I'm a big fan of that album. And this one too, Period of Transition. There's nothing wrong with this album. And yeah, It Fills You Up is on here, Joyous Sound. See, none of the songs on here are real Van Morrison classics. But still a really solid album from Van. I think those albums are very underrated. Next on the list, Deep Purple, MK1. I think the whole 3 albums from MK1, the first incarnation of Deep Purple with Rod Evans on vocal, do not get enough love. I think they're absolutely brilliant. My favorite Deep Purple era, I guess you'd call it. And the third album, self-titled Deep Purple, just incredible. This is the best Deep Purple album with April on it and The Painter. And oh man, this is a great record. Give this one a shot if you're, but I think people, it gets lost because of Smoke on the Water and all those albums. Not Smoke on the Water, Machine Head, I'm sorry. Yeah, that kind of classic Deep Purple period overshadows these albums, but man, this is brilliant stuff. Deep Purple, definitely MK1 underrated. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 5 left, so number 5 on the list, Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy put out 3 studio albums in his lifetime. Are You Experienced, Axis Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland. Now, I know everybody loves all 3 albums, but I don't think everybody loves these albums equally. I think Are You Experienced and Electric Ladyland get much more praise than the middle one, Axis Bold as Love, which is a phenomenal record. I think it's just as good as the other 2. Electric Ladyland's my favorite, but they're so close. I love all 3 of these albums, and this has just some great songs on it, like Little Wings on this, and If 6 Were 9, Spanish Castle Magic, Castles Made of Sand. I mean, just a freaking great record. And I think this needs to move up higher in the charts of Hendrix albums. Next, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin Presence. People don't like Led Zeppelin Presence as much as they like the first, 5? Is this number 6? I think it's awesome. First of all, Achilles' Last Stand, top 5 Zeppelin song of all time. T for Two, great track. For Your Life, Royal Orleans. This is a good album. Like, give it another chance if it's one of those Zeppelin albums you don't go to when you're listening to Zeppelin. I think it's a great album, great guitar album. Jimmy Sean on this album. Presence, come on. Give it some love. Next, the Rolling Stones. I mean, that classic period with Mick Taylor, or just even before that with Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street, Goat's Head Soup. Let's include It's Only Rock and Roll in that period. This is a freaking good album. The title track, It's Only Rock and Roll, is awesome. Luxury, I really like this album. Ain't Too Proud to Beg, great cover of a Temptation song. If You Can't Rock Me is a great starting track. Time Waits for No One, beautiful song. Till the Next Time We Say Goodbye, great ballad. This is Mick Taylor's last stand with the... No, this is Ron Wood, isn't it? Short and Curlies and Fingerprint File. Yeah, Mick Taylor's last stand with the Rolling Stones. Great album. Number 2 on my list. Yes, Tales from Topographic Oceans. Bloated. What other word rhymes with bloated? I mean, this album was just considered just a pile of crap when it came out. Disappointing after the legendary albums that preceded it. But I think it's a great record. I love it. The Revealing Science of God is just a masterpiece of music. I think it's a great album, but highly underrated in the Yes catalog. Number 1, the Beatles. Beatles 65. This album always appears at the bottom of everyone's ranking for Beatles albums. It's great. Now, they look really tired on here. Beatlemania is starting to wear thin. This album has a few covers on it, but I mean, it's got No Reply on it. It's got I'm a Loser on it. The 1-2 punch to start this album is incredible. It's got I'll Follow the Sun on it, and it's got 8 Days a Week, and Every Little Thing, and I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. And then it's got some great covers. Holly's Words of Love and Honey Don't, Carl Perkins song. Rock and Roll Music, Chuck Berry, Mr. Moonlight, Kansas City. It's a really great frickin' album. I mean, it deserves much more love in the Beatles canon, and I actually love that picture. That's my favorite Beatles era for how they looked. I think they looked so cool back then. So, yeah, that's my top 12 albums, underrated. Please throw some more at me, and let me know what you think of my list. Have a great day. We'll be back.